The Legislation Committee meeting will now come to order. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Jeffrey Boyd.
Present.
Alderman Vaccaro.
Present.
Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Narayan.
Present.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Chairwoman Ingracia.
Present.
You have 4.
All right, thank you, Mr. Clerk. Today we are here on Resolution 12 as amended. This was a resolution on exploring the effect of ward reduction here at the Board of Aldermen from 28 aldermen to 14.
A point of order.
Yes.
We can't discuss the resolution because the resolution died. It had a drop-dead date. We can discuss the reduction, but it would have to be reintroduced.
You're overruled. The date on the is the end of May.
No, it was never extended. And I checked.
Where
We
do you
cannot-
see where do you see the date as being?
I checked.
You
And
checked what?
we can't discuss the resolution because it would have to start over, and I would recommend that it starts over.
When was the report due back?
Mr. Clerk, you're aware of this, we talked. And it's my understanding that we can discuss the reduction, but we cannot discuss the resolution.
Would you like for me to speak to that?
You can, but I also think it would be important to get our legal representative, Louis Scali, in here before we do that if there's going to be
I can go get it.
some controversy on this.
And
Yeah,
he's
thank
also,
you.
I also had talked to him.
Thank you, Clerk Kennedy.
All right, thank you for your patience, everyone. We are going to have a general discussion on ward reduction today. And I've got the Alderwoman from the 28th Ward, Heather Navarro, here to update us on her work in that regard. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Legislation Committee. I'm here to give you an update on the Ward Reduction Advisory Committee, which began its work last year after Resolution 12 was passed by the Board of Aldermen. And so I presented to this committee last summer, and so what I want to do is just kind of pick up where we left off, let you know where we are. So as last summer, what we decided in this committee was that the Ward Reduction Advisory Committee would move forward as an advisory committee with 2 co-chairs. And this committee, as laid out in the resolution, is charged with looking at how we implement the reduction here at City Hall, going from 28 to 14. So this is, I just want to be clear, this is not a committee that's going to be in charge of redrawing any lines. This is a committee to hear from the public, hear from other aldermen, hear from city employees about how we operate right now with 28 aldermen and how we would do that with 14, and specifically looking at how we deliver constituent services, making sure that we're doing that in an equitable manner. How do we use ward capital budgets to fund projects, and also how that's going to be managed when we go from 28 to 14, knowing that the wards are going to look drastically different. They would also be looking at, there are certain ordinances and policies that can be ward-specific at times. And so just making sure that we're doing our due diligence as elected leaders of this city and using this as an opportunity to look at how we can govern more equitably, efficiently, and more effectively. And we've heard from citizens over the last year, a little bit more, just about their concerns. As we get closer to this deadline, there are a variety of concerns about the role of aldermen and how we're going, what sort of relationship people will continue to have with their aldermen so that their aldermen are good advocates, are also helpful in delivering those constituent services that they are prepared and equipped to legislate as they have elected us to do. So the idea behind this advisory committee is that we can provide an opportunity for the public to be involved in some of those discussions and then have an advisory committee made up of members of the public who could then make some recommendations. And these are recommendations that would then be presented to the legislation committee, and then the legislation committee would have an opportunity to approve those and send them on to the full board, or they could send it back to the committee and say, hey, we want you to look at this question a little bit more. Or the committee would be free to say, you know, we don't approve of these recommendations, and that would be the end of it. After last summer, Alderwoman Boyd and I started up the charge as co-chairs for this committee. Yes,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but just for
Alder-
clarity,
Alderwoman Pam Boyd from the 27th Ward. She and I took this advisory committee on, and if any of you went back and watched the hearing last summer, like I have, you may be a little confused because we had talked at that time about Alderman Kennedy serving in that capacity, and after some conversations about all the other things he had on his plate, and talking with Alderwoman Pam Boyd, she and I decided to move forward together, and I believe everyone was in agreement with that. And it was important to Alderwoman Boyd and I that we open up this opportunity to hear from as wide a group as possible, so that this advisory committee would really be representative of the public, because we thought it was really important that these recommendations that they reflect the concerns and the opinions of the public, and that this committee would have credibility. So when these recommendations came out, that they would have the greatest chance of being implemented. So we decided that we would put together a selection committee to choose the advisory committee members. And that was just out of an abundance of caution that it did not become a political issue. So Alderwoman Boyd and I had several meetings to talk about how we would put that together, and I believe we came up with a very distinguished panel for our selection committee. So these are the people who would then review the applications. And the selection committee is made up of 5 members. The first is Serena Mohammed, who's the Director of Strategic Initiatives at the Mental Health Board. She's also the founding executive
Point of
director.
order.
Yeah.
I believe we're discussing the resolution, which we are not even going to be able to take a vote on. It's going to have to go back to the full board and start over.
We're not taking a vote on it, Alderman, and I
We're
consult.
di- we're
Alderman,
discuss-
this is my meeting. I consulted
I am
with.
stating a point of order.
I'm overruling you. I've spoken with our clerk and our attorney, and it's been advised to me that we can talk on ward reduction, generally including Resolution 12, and this is part of her report back to us. We're not voting on anything today.
However, it has to go back to the full board.
So Serena Mohammed is also, is it okay for me to proceed, Chairwoman? Okay. Serena Mohammed is also the founding executive director of America Scores, where she worked with schools and families to help urban public school students improve their minds, bodies, and communities. Reverend David Girth is also on the selection committee. He's been the executive director of Metropolitan Congregations United since 2011, which is an interfaith organization that works on grassroots campaigns related to justice. Nicole Hudson, she leads the Academy for Diversity and Inclusion at Washington University and was previously the deputy mayor for racial equity and priority initiatives here at the city. Michael Evans, a political science professor at Harris Stowe State University, and Professor Todd Swanstrom, who's the Desmond Lee Endowed Professor in Community Collaboration and Public Policy at UMSL. So those are our selection committee members. And then in order to solicit applications for the advisory committee, we put together an application, which hopefully you all have seen, but I do have copies if anybody's interested in seeing what we put together. So this application was put together by Alderman Boyd and I, with input from several others. And this was made available in hard copy and print as well as online. Despite some challenges in getting it out there, we did receive over 50 applications. And those applicants have been in touch with me since, very eager to get to work, wondering when we are going to be making a decision on who those members are. And as you'll see in the application process, we did ask people to fill out a couple of questions about their interest. We indicated that we wanted to get a diverse group of applicants, so we asked them to share some information there. The way the advisory committee is set up is that there are 11 members, and so 2 are the co-chairs from the Board of Aldermen. There is, we've asked for a representative from the mayor's office, a representative from the city councilor's office. There is a representative from a citywide nonprofit that works with neighborhood groups, a North City resident, South City neighborhood resident, Central City neighborhood resident, 2 members at large, and then an academic advisor. So that's, based on our conversations, Alderwoman Boyd and I thought that that would be, number 11 would be a number that we could work with. And then our plan was to get this committee together, and then we could start convening some public meetings to solicit input, and then bring those together and provide a report back to this committee. So at this point, what we have so far is our selection committee, and they are ready to get to work in selecting the members of that advisory committee. And I'm happy to take any other questions.
Thank you again, Alderwoman. I just want to state for the record, for those of you who do not have a copy of the resolution in front of you, that this resolution does say that beginning in January of 2022, unless voters decide otherwise, the city shall be divided from 28 to 14 wards. So regardless of your opinion on whether or not we should maintain 28 aldermen or reduce, if that issue goes back to the voters or not, this is being done in order to make sure that we are taking the steps necessary to be accountable and equitable and transparent to our stakeholders, and it's owed to our residents. So regardless of your opinion on this, it would be irresponsible of us not to take steps to discuss with all of you and amongst ourselves what that would look like. And I'll take 1 round of questions from the committee, and then we'll open it up to public testimony. Alderman Boyd?
I don't have any questions at this time.
Alderman Vaccaro?
I have a bunch of questions, but we'll start with committee people. Did you discuss this with any of the committee people? I know there's a contingent of committee people here that say that no one talked to them about them, and ward reduction definitely affects committee people.
So, no, I have not had specific conversations with committee people. That was not the direction of the resolution, and I think what happens to the committee people is a function of the party. It's not a function of any particular ordinance passed by the city.
The other problem I have with this, a lot of people, first off, it never came back here, and when it did, and I asked you multiple times when I was the chairman how this was coming, and all I got was, I have time, but regardless of that, it should have came back, and I disagree with how this is being done, that you have to do it, you apply online, we're asking personal questions. There's a lot of people in my ward that do not have computers. There's a lot of people in a lot of wards that don't have computers, so I guess they're automatically ineligible unless they subscribe to the Post, and I don't even think it was even in there, but you know, I guess the way you had to do this was you tell your friends that maybe it's a good time to sign up. The other problem I have multiple times in letters, and I'll bring the letters for the next meeting, Alderwoman Boyd said, please leave her out of this. The subcommittee was changed without ever coming back to the chair, which I was the chair, to say we're going to change the subcommittee.
Alderman, I'd like to ask for
These
you
are-
to,
these
I
are
would
the
like for
que-
you to ask a question and
This
not
is the
continue.
question.
And I'm not going to tolerate us
This
talking
is the
about what
que-
happened when this committee
I'd
was
like to
yours.
know,
This is my
I'd like
committee
to
now.
know where and why you chose not to come back, why you chose to change the committee without coming back, which you don't have the right to do. And if all that's going to happen in this committee is I'm not going to be able to ask or say what I want,
I'm asking you to ask a question.
the question's simple. Why did you not follow simple rules? Why are you using Pam Boyd when she asked you to not? And I'll bring letters. Why did you change the subcommittee without coming back? What gave you that authority?
Thank you for the questions and the opportunity to clarify. So first of all, I went back and watched the hearing from last July and the one in May, and it was determined at that time that a subcommittee would not be formed. And Alderman Boyd specifically asked for some clarification on, are we forming a subcommittee or are we not? Which I very much appreciated that clarification. And it was decided at that time that there would not be a subcommittee created because, Alderman, your words were, I don't want to have a whole bunch of meetings about this. So the decision was that there would be 2 co-chairs, and those co-chairs would convene an advisory committee, and when they had recommendations, they would come back to the legislation committee. So that is how I have been moving forward since then. Since that time, so Alderwoman Boyd and I did work together as co-chairs. She indicated to me about a month ago that she would have to step back given her other responsibilities, and I respect that. So that is one thing that if there's any, if the committee at some point would like to weigh in on, how to move forward. That's not in the resolution that there be co-chairs, but there was no subcommittee established. In terms of public input, we sent out a press release. I made many of these hard copies available and asked the aldermen to take them to neighborhood meetings, to ward meetings. We were all prepared to share these with churches and very many public places. As soon as the press release went out, I received an email from you telling me to cease and desist, like this should not move forward at all. So that was part of the reason that this did not get out to more people. Despite that, we received hard copy applications in the mail, and we received over 50 people applying online. There are other advisory committees that have been formed by this board that were all strictly done online. There was not a selection committee formed. There were people that were tapped by aldermen, and I think that's fine. The way we decided to move forward was to make an application available in print and online, and to get that out there. I know there were some aldermen who asked us not to distribute it in their ward, which I think is unfortunate, because that just meant that their constituents may not have had the same access to others in order to apply for this. But we did what we could, despite the fact that we were being discouraged heavily from you and others from getting this out to the public. So I'm sorry that we didn't do more, but
How close to the end of the session was this told us? In my recollection, this was told to me maybe 3 weeks, 4 at the most, but I say 3 weeks before the end of our fiscal ending of our Board of Aldermen meetings. There was no time to get this out. How many weeks before were the aldermen notified of your, I know it was only maybe 3 weeks for me, but.
So the resolution was not tied to the legislative session. So it was specifically set up with a May 31st, 2019 deadline. And part of that was because at the time we were still considering we didn't know whether ward reduction was going to end up on the April 2019 ballot. And the reason to do the May 2019 deadline was to say, look, we understand that this could end up on the ballot, and if this decision is reversed, this committee will shut down. So it was never tied to the sine die of that session. We would have liked to have sent out applications sooner. However, given that we were in the midst of primary season, we thought it was best just to not flood everybody with this information while elections were going on. There was also a Better Together conversation that was happening. And so there were a lot of things at play. I would have liked this to have moved forward quicker, and I would say I was kind of surprised that more people have not been supportive of having these conversations at City Hall, and that's part of the reason I'm here to give you this update now. And I made myself available if there was when you requested to have a meeting with the legislation committee, I said I am available, I will be there. A legislation committee meeting was scheduled, but this was not put on the agenda. I didn't have control over the agenda. I was not the chair at the time, so I did what I could to get back in front of the legislation committee last session.
Did you tell me you were going to be out of town during that meeting? And I'll go back and pull it if you like.
Okay, that's fine. You didn't ask if this would be on the agenda at that time.
Yeah, I kept asking how this was coming along. You kept saying, I have time.
I've shown up every time I've been requested.
I'm not going to argue it. I can tell you that do the right thing, go back to the full board and start over like it should be.
Alderman Mohammed?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I have several questions and these questions regarding the process that I find concerning and discouraging. You continuously say there are 2 co-chairs for this advisory committee. Now, Alderwoman Boyd of the 27th Ward has stated publicly, in electric form as well, that she has no involvement with this committee, and she has asked you to hold this committee back. What happened with that?
So Alderwoman Boyd, as I said, about a month or so ago, I don't remember the exact date, emailed me and said that she was no longer available to work on this committee as co-chair. And I thanked her for her time and said I was sad not to be working with her on this, but I hope that we could work together on other things. And that up until that point, she was the co-chair. So I don't know what to say about that. I have many email exchanges between the two of us working on this together. She attended the meetings. But since she told me that she was not able to serve on this, I have not represented to anyone that she continues to be the co-chair.
Okay, so let's discuss this. So first, this is perplexing to me because in Black Caucus meetings from the previous session, dating back up until May, Alderwoman Boyd contends that she has not been a member or not been involved with this particular process. So I don't know what the miscommunication is, but from this point, I see it as a white Central West End alderman who is representing the city for an advisory committee group in a majority black city. I see that as a problem. There is not a black co-chair involved with this process. We could talk about that later. Next, you listed 5 members. How many of these members stay in North St. Louis? Out of those 5 members on this working group, Serena Muhammad, Reverend Daniel Garth,
David Girth.
Nicole Hudson, Mike Evans, Professor Todd Swanson. How many stay in North St. Louis?
I do not have their residential addresses. The selection committee was not selected for that reason. They were selected because of their particular expertise on public policy and community organizing. Their job is then to put together an advisory committee who will make the recommendations. This selection committee does not make the recommendations.
Okay, no. So you have a committee of 5 people discussing reduction from 28 wards to 14.
No, that's not what
We
they're
don't know if
discussing.
they stay in the city of St. Louis. We don't know if they stay in North St. Louis, in the Central West End, or South City. We don't know their addresses, but they are choosing to get recommendations to supposedly maybe this committee or a committee that the president will appoint on ward reduction. Okay, so let's start over. What's the purpose of this
could I
committee?
clarify?
No, not at all. I
Because
just
that's
want-
that's not the case. That's
What's
not
the
what they
purpose of the
do.
committee?
Oh, the
What is the responsibility of this advisory working group?
The advisory committee, which does not include those 5 people that we
Okay.
just discussed, the purpose of that advisory committee is to make recommendations after hearing from citizens, hearing from other aldermen, hearing from city employees about their concerns and questions about ward reduction. What are the challenges that are presented when we have 14 aldermen representing the city of St. Louis instead of 28? What are those challenges, and how do we address those now before those 14 aldermen take their seats in 2023?
So instead of, so on this application, you have addresses listed. You ask people to give their address.
Right,
Am
for
I
the,
right?
and
So no, it's okay. So you asked for addresses, but you mean to tell me you didn't actually look at these addresses, you just chose people based off their occupation?
No.
So this is better together on a mini level. So
Alderman, could I please clarify?
Yeah, when I'm
But that
done.
is just, it's
Okay.
Mohammed,
factually
if you could
incorrect.
just let her answer your questions.
I'm not done yet.
Well, but
can answer when
you're
I'm done.
repeating inaccurate information that I would like
It's
the
not, this
opportunity
is
to
everything
correct.
you listed. You gave these names. These are names I never heard of. In fact, I don't think any black alderman has ever heard of these names sitting on an advisory committee. I know I've never gotten an email from you saying come to an advisory working group
We
meeting.
haven't, the advisory committee has not been formed yet.
So who chose these people?
Those are 5 members of a selection committee that Alderwoman Boyd and I chose. She specifically asked some of these members, and I asked some of these members. They were selected to review the applications. You have the application in front of you. Though that is what the address and the occupation, all of that is what we asked of applicants to the committee. The selection committee will review those applications and choose. So that's the distinction. So I think that's part of the confusion, is that we're talking about 2 different groups of people.
I don't have. I have a sample application in front of me. I never seen any applications that were done. by people
That is the
interested.
application that I sent to all of the aldermen. It is the one that was posted on the city's website, and
Can I
that
get
was
the
for the
applications
advisory
that people
committee.
filled out? Can I get those applications? I would love to see how many people in North St. Louis apply, because I can tell you none. You want to know
I
why?
can
Because
actually
people in
tell
North
you
St.
how
Louis are
many-
actually against war reduction. You want to know why they're against war reduction? Because their alderman, who are black, tells them that's going to drastically affect their city services, which is already affected right now. The problem with this is, this is a fake, phony, better together plan on a St. Louis level. You want to put together a 5 people. See, this is a problem. You know, I bought this picture. Mr. Clerk, can you pass these out to the members of the committee, please. I love this picture here. This picture shows equality versus equity.
I'm very familiar.
Good. I'm gonna paint this on my door. The problem with this is, see, equality, this is white aldermen's views of war reduction. Equity, this is black alderman view of war reduction. It's not about the number for us. I don't care if we have 5, if we have 4, if we have 2. But when you try to slap together a process within 2 years to drastically affect how we do business in the city of St. Louis, how our government infrastructure is, when you try to pass this through in 2 years, and we had to pass 10 years to do it, and it's not our fault. We was not members of the Board of Aldermen. I blame the aldermen that were here. They didn't do anything about it. But when you try to run something through in 2 years, and you want to promise to North St. Louis, you want to promise to disenfranchised voters, well, it's going to be better. How can we expect this to be better when the past years and the generations before show us that we've been screwed, our communities have been neglected, they've been marginalized, they've been disconnected from City Hall and neglected? How do you expect us to care anything about this working group, care anything about war reduction, care anything about making City Hall more efficient, when the years before has shown to us that it does not matter, because no matter how efficient City Hall can be, no matter who sits in room 200, North St. Louis is still going to be with 12,000 vacant buildings. We're still going to have a crime rate that's 2% higher than South St. Louis or the Central West End. We're still not going to have economic development. We still don't have TIF funding, which your ward benefits greatly from. We still don't have businesses, which your ward greatly benefits from. Our tax brackets are still going to be low. How do you expect us to even care about this, agree with this, or even attempt to apply to serve on an advisory committee when honestly it does not matter? It's not going to change the conditions of North St. Louis. That's a problem for me. I'm sure it's no secret. I've stated publicly I'm against war reduction. It's the whitewashing of the city of St. Louis to me. This is going to take out black elected officials, and the only thing that's keeping North St. Louis sustainable is black elected officials fighting for basic city services, fighting for trash to get picked up, fighting for parks to be cleaned, fighting for grass to be cut, fighting for vacant buildings to be boarded up. That's what we have to fight with. I would love to sit here and look at legislation, go through board bills, look at the city's budget, but I can't, because I have to go back to Natural Bridge and make sure that vacant buildings are cut, make sure vacant buildings are boarded up, because you know why? I'm the only person that's going to do it. City Hall won't do it, no matter how efficient it is. This is a problem for me. I don't agree with it. The process is flawed. It's not transparent. It's not based in equality. Well, no, it's based in equality for sure, but it's not based in equity. If you're going to talk about war reduction, then I would like to see a committee of 30 people from North St. Louis, 5 people from the Central West End, give me 5 people from South St. Louis. I don't agree with this. I think this is a problem. I do plan on fighting war reduction again. I'm optimistic that we will pass this bill. And I think you are very intelligent. I think that you actually understand the issues that North St. Louis go through. I look forward to you being a co-sponsor on my board bill. And I welcome any other alderman to be a co-sponsor as well. This is a problem.
I appreciate everyone's passion, but please refrain from clapping and yelling out loud. Just like to make sure we let the alderman here continue.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. We have to take this back to the voters. I know we keep saying the voters voted already. However, 4 times previous to 2012, we voted against war reduction. So if we can try it 5 times to get it passed, we can't try it 2 times to make sure that voters understand exactly what they're voting on, because I can promise you they don't. My residents in the 21st Ward have voiced their opinions. I have one of the highest voting wards in the city of St. Louis. In the city, not just in North City, in the city. It's actually the 4th highest. My residents have voiced their opinions. We want to re-vote. We don't want this to go through. There has been the same voices echoed in the 3rd Ward, the 4th Ward, the 5th Ward. These are the same voices echoed through. We need to take this back to a vote. I have sponsored a board bill. Would you vote for my board bill?
To put word reduction back on the ballot?
Yes.
I would not, because my constituents have spoken very clearly that they do not want it back on the ballot. Over 80% of the constituents. So I feel like they've spoken loudly and clearly to me that they want to see this process move forward. So, and that's consistent with my vote last session as well. Can I address some of the other questions you raised? Madam Chair, would that be okay?
Yeah, we would appreciate that. Thank you.
I want to say that I do not disagree with anything that you said about the history of inequity in St. Louis, and
But you
that
disagree
is.
with putting ward reduction back on the ballot. So, and honestly, you do
Alderman,
disagree.
one more time, I'm going to ask you, please, you've had time to speak. Please let her answer you so that you understand where she's coming from as well.
In terms of transparency, everything that we have done has been shared widely with the entire board. I attempted to sit down with every alderman to talk one-on-one about how we should form this advisory committee so that it could be done in a way that, that had buy-in. Unfortunately, not everyone was willing to sit down with me, but I attempted multiple times to sit down and talk with people. I had I sent out several dates on multiple occasions that I was available to meet, and many aldermen did take me up on that. The application was shared with all of the aldermen, so all of that has been put out there. I want to, in terms of, yes, we have major issues in this city in terms of disparity. The racial equity indicators, I think, has been very helpful. We have a lot of work to do, and I don't expect that anything will change unless we sit down and start talking about how to make change, and that is the point of this advisory committee. Whether it ends up back on the ballot and whether we choose to reduce the wards or not, right now, that is what our city charter says, and there are a lot of people out there asking why we are not preparing for that to happen. If it doesn't happen, fine. But as elected leaders, we have been told by the voters, and I don't want to get back into debating whether or not we should reduce the wards. The point of this committee is to say, right now, that is the law, and there needs to be some conversation happening about how we do that well. If it doesn't happen, then it doesn't happen. But in the meantime, these conversations need to happen. And I would love for this to be an effort between North, Central, and South Side aldermen. And honestly, part of the reason this has been a deliberately slow process is to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to be heard and to make sure that we are sitting down and talking to as many people as possible before moving forward. The idea behind this application was that it would not be a surprise. I've sat down and talked with anyone who has reached out to me and said, what's going on with the Ward Reduction Advisory Committee? How can I be helpful? So I apologize if you and I have not had that conversation. That's part of why I'm here today, to let you know where we are. We have not convened the committee yet, but we are still open to input about the questions that they would have. But I think if there are a lot of people who are opposed to word reduction, those are absolutely the first people we need to talk to and say, what is it that that concerns you? We obviously know there are major issues with how those lines get drawn, absolutely, and we need to have some serious conversations about that. I am not saying that I'm leading up the committee to do that by any means, but I do hear that if we are going to reduce the wards and aldermen are going to have twice as many constituents as they have now, we know we cannot go from 28 to 14 and not change anything and expect it all to run smoothly. We absolutely have to talk about how are aldermen going to respond to twice as many constituent service requests? How are aldermen going to be able to attend all of the different neighborhood meetings that we are asked to attend? There are so many things that we do as aldermen that when you double the size of our wards, the number of constituents, that's going to create a lot of challenges, and we can't expect it to be better unless we sit down and start having these conversations, and that is what this advisory committee is formed to do.
Thank you, Alderman Wrighton.
I wasn't done, Madam Chairwoman. Is that my time? Is there a specific time
For
that we're
now,
allowed?
because we have public testimony as well, so I just want to make sure we get through before we ask other questions or decide to stay on. I have another meeting at 2:30.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I'd like to yield my time to Mr. Collins Muhammad for further questioning.
Does that pleases the chair?
You're more than welcome to, yes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Thank you, Alderman. Nice tie.
Thank you.
Again, Alderman, my frustration is not directed towards you. My frustration is directed towards the process in which this is taking place. And you catching this on the back end. You and I were elected roughly at the same time. The fact is, aldermen before us did not put in place a plan to transition. And right now, again, we are shoving this down taxpayers' throat, asking them to go along with this plan, and there is no real protocol set in place. That's my problem with this. Earlier, you said that your constituents in the 28th Ward agrees with ward reduction, which I'm sure they live in a fairy tale fantasy world. I wish my community looked like the 28th Ward. How many times have you been to North St. Louis?
Like this week, or, I mean, in my life?
No, I mean North St. Louis for real, not just going down Grand or Salisbury or Kings Highway.
was
How
in-
many times have you been actually to North St. Louis?
Well, I was in O'Fallon Park just last week for a good amount of time, walking around. I've been to several events, I've spent MLK Day in North St. Louis. The 28th Ward is, right alongside Delmar, so I'm often in North St. Louis. I mean, whether I'm, running an errand or going to meet with somebody, there are neighborhood meetings that, I've been invited to come talk about a specific issue. I also work for Missouri Coalition for the Environment, and sometimes in that capacity, I have been up there for meetings or going to look at a community garden that someone set up. I couldn't give you a number, but I could, we could go Brett Kavanaugh style, and I could bring out my calendar, and we could go through all my different meetings and appointments. But often, not as often as I would like, partly because my job does keep me doing a lot of things in my ward. And I think it would be helpful if all of us spent more time in other parts of the city. I absolutely agree with you that there are two different St. Louises. I mean, I get that, and I have seen it. I don't understand it in the way as somebody who's born and raised here, but I think that's absolutely why this committee is necessary, to have a place to have these conversations, because otherwise it's talking heads on two different sides of the room, and the whole point of this is to get us together and to invite the public into that space.
What's your perception of North St. Louis?
My perception of North St. Louis. Can you be more specific?
Your first thought walking into a North St. Louis neighborhood, what goes through your mind? What's the first thing that goes through your mind? I could tell you the first thing that goes to my mind when I walk into your neighborhood.
Okay, well, do you want to give me an example of what you're looking
The
for
first thing
then?
I think,
Sure.
first thing, damn, white folks live nice.
So
It's a realistic perception. Whether I'm in the 28th Ward or the 6th Ward or the 15th Ward, that's my perception. Or even the 9th Ward, that's my perception. So I just want to know, what's your first perception when you walk into a North St. Louis neighborhood?
Well, do you want to specify a North St. Louis neighborhood? I'm not going to say that they're all the same.
Oh, they all struggling, doesn't matter. I could promise you they're all struggling. So your first perception, you could choose a neighborhood you want.
Okay, I would say that, this is an example of the disparity in the city of St. Louis, that I can be so close to, to Forest Park and yet see such disparity, and it shouldn't be this way. And there's a lack of investment, and a lot of that has been intentional over the years, and we absolutely need to do something about it.
Do you think in 2 years we can fix that disparity? We can fix this system that has been set in place to drastically affect or neglect North St. Louis? In 2 years, can we do that?
I think that's a lot to achieve in 2 years. The ward reduction happened, 2023 is when the first election happens. So we're looking to 2023, and I don't think we're going to solve, the disparity issues in the city of St. Louis in that time. And I'm not claiming that I or this committee is going to solve all of those problems. What we are trying to do is provide a venue to have these conversations and say, at least through this piece of ward reduction, what opportunity is here going from 28 to 14? This is not going to solve everything, but what it has the opportunity to do is say, how can the Board of Aldermen be more responsive? How can we govern better? How can we take the racial equity indicator study and put that into action as aldermen? The city of St. Louis needs much more than that, but this is what we can do in our capacity.
So your short answer is no.
No, I think I would be naive if I thought we could solve all of the city's problems in the next 2 years.
So do you think it is fiscally and socially responsible to reduce wards without a plan?
I wish there had been a plan back in 2012. I wasn't here, like you said, we weren't here, so now is our chance, and I think a lot of people are saying, you gave yourself 10 years, where's the plan? And so that's what I've been trying to do for the last 2 years, is have a conversation about the plan. And just because we're, if some people might say we're behind the 8 ball, some people would say, wow, this doesn't happen until 2023. In either case, there's no better time than the present to start having these conversations.
Start having conversations, yes. To start moving this into practice, that's a problem. The fun thing is, there were 11 aldermen in 2012 who fought against ward reduction, who fought against it every step of the way. And here it is, 12 years later. In 2019, we are still having the same discussion where black aldermen are telling you this is not in the best interest of our community, and white aldermen are telling us, yes, it is. What's changed? Nothing. And you just acknowledge that you
Alderman,
do
I'm
not
going to open
think-
it up for public testimony. We're going to come back and talk about this when we have more time.
You can cut off my mic. I'm going to keep talking. You just acknowledge that we will not have a plan within 2 years, that you will be naive to think that we can discuss this in these
Alderwoman,
2
thank you for
years
your
and
time.
come up with a
I'd like to
realistic
call
plan
up
to reduce
Columbi
wards. And we have
and
not
Danette.
been able to, and we have not been able to do that yet. And you are still promoting this ward reduction.
Before we start on public testimony, I just wanted to mention to folks there's something that I'm supposed to read to make sure that everyone sort of knows the ground rules here. People wishing to testify at the public hearing have signed a list, and I have it here. We will allow witnesses to talk for a maximum of 2 minutes. Any witness may respond to questions by members of the committee for an additional period of time. I'd really like for there to just be a quick round of questions after the 2 minutes that you're allowed to speak, if you take that, and then we'll move on to the next person. So thank you for being here. If you could just state your name and where you live, that would be great.
Oh, my name is Columbi Antoinette, and I live in the 3rd Ward. I am the international president of the International People Democratic Uhuru Movement, and I am also the chair of Keep 28. So I have been actively in all the wards, 21st Ward, 3rd Ward, 18th Ward, every single ward, and I know, and I speak for the people that are at work right now that is against this. And when we even talk about this whole conversation, I just really want to appreciate a lot of what John Muhammad was saying, because I unite with that, a lot of what he was saying. But this is an attack against the black community. This is not just an attack against all the people. This is an attack. I'm not in no office. And just to let you know that everything is political. Everything is concentrated economics. And this means death to black people. So I'm speaking for all the people that have signed my petition, that I have went into white wards, your ward, 28th Ward, and won white people to sign the petition as well. This means death to our people. This is not some small, mediocre thing. This means death to people. And the last time I was here and y'all was speaking about it, y'all said that y'all had a blueprint of what happened in Kansas City and all these other places that are gentrified. So that's what this is gentrification. This is to push the African people out of their homes, and we won't have no political power. It will be twice as hard for a black person, a poor person, to represent their own community when you take it to 14. So this is something might be cute for you because you don't live where I live. And driving through or walking through O'Fallon Place do not make you an expert. And you can say, yes, I know that it's too St. Louis, but what are you doing about it? You can't. You can't solve these problems. Only black people can solve these problems. These are black problems, and black people have to solve it. So I am here to serve you notice that it's not going to happen. So you can have all the meetings you want, because I'm going to continue to have Sunday rallies. I'm going to continue to bust my butt for my people. For my people, because that's what this is. The same little plans that y'all try and say, oh, nobody want to work in the city, so we're going to open it up for police officers to come in from the city to the county. The same little plan with the DSEG program, and they shut down our schools. And then all the people.
If you could just
I'm
wrap up
almost
real
done.
quickly.
I'm
Thank you
almost
so
done.
much.
And all the people that say that they are socialists. How could you be a socialist and allow this? How could you not sign this bill when John put it forth? And you say you're a socialist. That's why you didn't win. That's why you didn't win, because we seen through that. I don't care how you protest with a sign say Black Lives Matter. You don't understand the Black Lives Matter, because it will never matter until we have black power.
Thank you for your testimony. Jason Westbrook.
Greetings. My name is Jason Westbrook. I was born in this great city and state we call St. Louis, Missouri, on the north side. When I say great city state, on one hand, I am proud to say that because of all the histories that we made, but on that same hand, that same breath, I am ashamed to say that because since 1930, when we entered into the Union, we've been disenfranchised. Even though it was 1,000 free men, they say we don't give a about you. We still gonna enter into this union as a slave state. And since then, I would piggyback on what she said. Since then, we've been seeing gentrifications, not only throughout, I mean, we don't gotta go to Washington, D.C., we don't gotta go to St. Petersburg, Southside, we don't gotta go to certain parts of New Orleans. We can look here, and we can see what they did to Kinloch before they officially shut it down. You know Cool Valley, we know Ferguson, we know Springdale, all that was part of Kinloch before they shut down. We can look at what they did with the NGA. $114 million y'all decided to put in our neighborhood to uproot us. But before y'all put it in the neighborhood, it was dilapidated. Why? Because of certain laws that this very chamber passed called redlining to restrict finances from coming in our neighborhood. But the only time y'all release finances is when y'all uproot us. $114 million y'all decided to uproot us, then spent $1.75 billion. I could see if y'all would have put $1.75 billion in the north side, believe you me, it would be much different now. But when you restrict finances from coming in and they get dilapidated, then you get certain aldermen to say, let us do something about it. Well, this is what you can do about it. Step up out of the way and let us, come on now. The only thing I'm saying is this here. You either could be on the good side of the time or the wrong side of time. We know this August coming up. August coming up. 400 years? 1619, the August of 1619, they brought 20 Africans over here for a trial period. That was the wrong side of law. 400 years later, this August, y'all gotta be on the right side of law. And so let us overturn the contradictions. Let us not keep disenfranchising the folks who built America. Come on now. Only thing I'm saying is this here. This ward reduction, it only benefits the ruling class. But all thing I'm saying, and I feel shut down with this here. A lot of times, white folks don't give a about our history. So let me remind y'all about our history here in St. Louis in 1900, before the World's Fair. You had white folks that said, you know what? It's time for us to have a new St. Louis. And at that time, it was the St. Louis Transit Center. You had the poor working class going against the ruling elites. The poor working class said, you know what? Enough is enough. So a socialist movement came, a grassroots socialist movement came about. And guess what? Guess what? That was in May, this month, May in 1900. It came to boiling point in June of 1900s. When the ruling class, they say, you know what, we got to keep these trolleys running. We got to keep these trolleys.
Sir, I just want to remind you that for every time you take over, you're taking up someone else's
Okay, that's
time.
fine. I'm finna close it with this here. And every time you stop me, it prolongs it. But make a long story short, you had a movement say in June to say, you know what, it came to a ball and you had shootouts in the streets of St. Louis. This socialist ground roots movement versus the elite. History tends to repeat itself, but I think we might end up having to take a page from y'all book. I'm telling you now, I don't give a about what y'all sign. Northside is going to stay black regardless. Even if we got to go out in the streets and have a shootout, you don't want another Ferguson on your hand. So I commend y'all, or I charge y'all to be on the right side of history and shoot down this bill that keep gentrifying us.
Tushara Masimba. And if anybody is able or willing to go under their 2 minutes, this is just the first of many conversations we'll have on this issue, but I do have a prior commitment at 2:30. It was available before the hearing.
It's not-
If the other folks who are signed up before you are able to get us through by 2:20 or 2:25, then I'll allow you to come up and speak. But again, there'll be more opportunities to have, this is just the first conversation in this committee, so.
Or you can speak regardless. Yeah, I just want to say that this whole process is illegitimate.
Really quickly, can you just
My name is
state your
Tichara
name and where you
Masimba.
live?
I'm the Economic Development Director of the Black Power Blueprint. I live in North St. Louis. This is an illegitimate process. What is happening now is the African community in North St. Louis is about to be starved to death. And what you want to offer us today is some kind of process whereby you claim that we are supposed to have a discussion about how the black community of North St. Louis will be starved to death. We don't want to have a discussion with you. What we want to do is disarm you. It is an illegitimate process. This process is also part of a larger process put forth by the St. Louis Economic Development Partnership, who intends to control the entire economy of this region. They want to control the ports so that they have access to all of the goods, international and otherwise, that enter this city and leave this city. They want to control and privatize the airport and all of the public facilities. They want to control access to the tax base so that they can turn it over to private developers. They want to control the LRA and the land access to African people in this city. This is part of a larger process, and as was stated, it is part of a process that is an ongoing process whereby a group of people have created an economy where they live at the expense of black people. You are a settler colonizer, and you do not even belong here. You have no legitimacy, and we will fight you tooth and nail.
Penny Hess.
My name is Penny Hess, and I want to start by saying...
Could you just tell us where you live really quickly?
I live in the 21st Ward, actually.
Okay, thank
and
you.
I want to start by saying that I completely support from the white community the right to the 28 wards, and I completely agree with the demand that we have to keep those 28 wards, that it has to go back on the ballot, that it is about taking away resources and political power out of the hands of the black community one more time, which is the whole history of the city. And I saw the editorial in today's paper threatening that, oh, the law is the law. Well, slavery was the law. Yes. And the decision of Judge Taney for Dred Scott was the law, and that the racist covenants of this city was the law. And everything that has been an attack on the African community has been the law, including the right of policemen to gun down young black men and women on the streets of the city. The law uses that. And so we have to take back this law. This is an unjust law, and we cannot accept it. I also know that this person from the 28th Ward, made a statement that there are two St. Louises. Yes, I want to be really clear, because the white community in St. Louis has an average assets of $165,000 for a family of four. The average black family of four has an average of $16,000 or less, and that the income in the white community is almost 4 times higher than in the black community. So we're talking about the fact that, yeah, this is a slave state, that African people worked and built this state. They did the work, but white people have the money. So there is one answer to dealing with the disparities that John Muhammad was talking about, and that's reparations are due from white people, from the city, and from the corporations that have continued to ride roughshod over the backs of African people. And black people have a right for political and economic power in their own hands. And I support the Black Power Blueprint. And I want to say unity through reparations.
Megan Marshall.
My name is Megan Marshall, and I do not live within the 28 wards, but I have been to the black community, and I've seen that the working class black people, they do not know about ward reduction. They have not seen any type of propaganda in their neighborhoods. They don't know what it means. Ward reduction was passed on the ballot because white people voted for it, because they knew what it was. The black working class are the ones that are going to be affected by that, and this is why it needs to go back on the ballot, because these people, they're going to be affected by it, the black working class. I'm over the petition for the Keep 28 campaign. I'm over the petition to keep the 28 aldermanic wards, and this has been a huge problem. This is why in the South City there has been propaganda spread around and not in the North City, because to keep these people out of the know. And we're not going to continue to let this happen. We are in our community. We are letting people know about the ward reduction and what that's going to mean to them, and how drastic and how terrible it's going to be for them. And that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you so much for being here. Casey McKay, or McKee.
Hi, my name is Casey Mackey, and I live in Ward 4, and I just want to completely agree with all the statements that have been made before me, that the ward reduction is a complete attack on the black community, and I'm very tired of the statements that the people already voted to reduce the wards, when it's been made clear that the North Side did not know about this thing on the bill, and a lot of people didn't even vote for it. And I just want to really salute the president of the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement, Kalambai, and for leading this grassroots campaign where the people are fighting every single day to keep 28 wards, and that there is a growing movement of the Uhuru movement and white people that are joining under the leadership of the Uhuru movement, and we are out there at least 3 days a week getting petitions in white wards of white people that want to stand on the right side of history and say that Keep 28 is a fight for black power, and that reparations are owed to the black community for the historic crimes committed by this city, putting them under police containment, putting them in genocidal conditions, starving them. We're tired of having conversations about this when there is a movement that is actually doing something on the ground with the Black Power Blueprint, building economic development, and making a clear call to white people to say that if you want to join the right side of history and support what will actually defend black lives, which is black power, then pay reparations, circulate the petition in our communities, and support keeping 28 wards, because anything less than that is genocide against the black community. Uhuru.
Daniel Sesh. I do have just a few more minutes. Oh, great. Okay, so we've got, my vice chair said that he would stay to make sure everyone has an opportunity to testify. Thank you for being here, sir. Go ahead.
Daniel Sesh. I live in the 28th Ward, and Alderman Mohammed, you are stereotyping the 28th Ward. It changes from block to block, and yes, there's some wealthy areas, most definitely. But there are also some, I'll call, lower middle class areas, and probably some blue collar areas as well. They may not be a majority, but it is not homogeneous. And I've been there over 50 years. In fact, I bought my house when we were being redlined, and you couldn't get a mortgage, and it was under $10,000. May not be that way today, but a bunch of blacks and whites together decided we loved these old houses. We were comfortable with diversity, and we stuck around. Now, the advantages of the ward reduction is that I have seen, it happens in the county too, you end up with wards that are a little bit more mixed, not just racially, but also economically. Part of the problems in some parts of the South St. Louis and some parts of North St. Louis is that they're very homogeneous, both economically and racially. And those attitudes get reflected. It's useful, I think, then, for aldermen to have constituents within their wards that have a more mixed point of view.
I'd like to make sure that everyone is respectful of whomever is at the mic.
The advantage would be, again, with larger wards, is that each alderman could have a full-time assistant. Right now, the aldermen have to do their own secretarial work, except I think there's a couple of overworked people that do everything else. It might be possible then to assign the NSOs to each ward. Right now, I think each NSO takes care of 2 wards. So you could have, again, 2 staff people under each alderman, responsible to that alderman and to the city. I think one of the things is there's a tendency to like having these small municipalities. And let me give an example from St. Louis County.
If you can, quickly.
Okay,
over time.
Chesterfield, which is very affluent, is trying to change the law that they are forced to share some of their sales tax, which comes from people from all over the county and the city who buy at their stores. They're trying to reduce the amount of money they have to share with other parts of this county that don't have all those stores, whether it's Northwoods or U City or some parts of South County. And that's that self-interested group of homogenous people who say, I only want to take care of my people, to hell with the rest of you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to let Vice Chair Narayan take over at this time. I just wanted to thank everyone again for spending some time with us. We will have a discussion again, not just in this committee, but I'm sure elsewhere.
And so I'm on the list to speak, and I want to speak.
Ma'am, if you could sit down for just a
No,
moment.
I don't. I want
Ma'am,
to speak, and I have a
we're going
right
to allow
to
you to
speak.
speak. I'm just saying that.
I want you to be there. I want you to be here. You're coordinating. You're coordinating.
I'm
this.
leaving.
You have to hear what we have to say.
I'm just saying goodbye and letting Vice Chairman.
I want you to hear what I have to say, because you're white, and I'm white, and this other woman's white, and we hide under these little Robert's Rules of Order to act like there's something objective about what's happening here, and it is not objective, and it's over. We're no longer the overseers.
Ma'am,
you all don't have to worry about how you're going to figure out how the black community is going to live in the future under your 14 or whatever. It's over. I unite with the black community that is calling for keep the 28, because it is a fight for black power.
Ma'am,
and it's nice to
could you
stand up
state your
and walk
name and
out.
where you live for the record?
Kitty Riley, and I live in St. Louis.
Thank you.
Okay, the whole thing is a sham, and I hope this is being recorded, because the whole thing has been rigged. The whole thing was done without the whole city really knowing about it, and you know it. It was talked about months ago. It's a rigged law, and it's just like all the other, and the way that you hold up the law, you should be distinguishing the law that brought Jim Crow, convict leasing, the slave trade, and not honor the law, especially a law that you did in backroom deals. We know who's going to benefit from your ward reduction, and it's all the corporate interests that always benefit in the moneyed white sector of St. Louis that's going to benefit and that always benefit from all the laws. And the thing about diversity, okay, so I have seen the gentrification creeping up into the north side. Nobody did anything all these years about the conditions forever, but certainly since the Team 4 plan, about the north side. And then you'll put money in and put in sidewalks and put in trees, you know, something that you have and we have in the white community in the south side, but it is not to bring any kind of economic development or improvement to the north side. It's so you can start gentrifying and get more and more housing for the students to live in, up Sarah, up Northstead. You see all the gentrification, and I feel like the whole thing I want to address about diversity, everyone's happy, oh, we got green bicycles now. You know, okay. This means, good, you can live like we do in the white community. And diversity favors the white community. Diversity doesn't do a thing for African people. We love it in our schools. Of course, we shut down their schools. We didn't invest anything in their schools. Then they have to bus their children to our schools. And then, oh, good, our kids will have an experience. Maybe they'll hear hip hop. It's like to aggrandize our children, give them an experience, diversity. And there's no such thing anyway as diversity, because even if you're poor, if you are poor in St. Louis and you live below the poverty line, you still live in a community with social wealth. You are surrounded by comfort, cafes, everything else that we live with, and we know we live with it. You can still go into Whole Foods and have a beer while you're shopping or a glass of wine. That's white leisure. If you're a black person in St. Louis and you live below the poverty line, You are living in an entire community steeped in poverty. There's no comparison about diversity. There's no diversity. There's no relatives to go to get a hand up or anything. You're living in deep poverty, and that's St. Louis. And this is a facade of democracy. This whole thing about this bill and this law is more extraction that you can get from African people to benefit who's coming into this city. Don't pretend the NGA hasn't been plopped down, the expense paid by the African community to see that. Now this guy opens up a grocery store. Oh, please. You can't eat if you live in North City, St. Louis. You cannot eat. You must drive. That means you must have a car. You have to go 25 minutes anywhere to get anything to eat. Why aren't you solving that? You don't need to bring this bill that keeps African people from having real closer representation to the city government to say, we really do need to talk about this now. I mean, it has been 600 years. We need to really talk about that. That's why we have to have this law, so we can really talk about how we're going to really get everything fair and even. It's black power. The African community will say what laws get passed affecting the African community. And it's black community control of their communities, of the police in their community. And I support that, black community control. And you have to solve the problem of why you can't bring police. You can't get people in the city to want to be police. They have a notorious, brutal reputation for their treatment of African people who would want to be on the police force.
Ms.
But you want to
Riley, if
pass
you
a
could
law, and
please wrap it up.
reparations is due. And reparations is due from this city. And you are if you collect a paycheck, you owe reparations from this city. It's due from the Jesuits for bringing enslaved African labor here to build SLU. Don't put these people on these committees you're talking about. That has nothing to do with representing the interests of the African working class or white people that want to take a stand on the forward side of history. We say, no, we're uniting with the black community to keep the 28. Reparations are due from the white corporations that you want to have on all your little panels, from the white universities, from the white moneyed sector that think they're going to make more money with these deals of pulling the county and city together and reducing the wards. And reparations is due from white people in general. Yes. Who are unity through reparations.
Thank you. Kathy Gamache?
Excuse me, I believe I was number 6, and I was intentionally skipped by Madam Chairwoman. My name is Grady Brown. I'm a city resident, and also I'm the coordinator of the Key 28 campaign, Uhuru, outreach coordinator.
Excuse me, sir. What was your name again? I don't
Grady
have
Brown. I was number 6 on that list. Your chairwoman intentionally skipped me for whatever reason. That's all right, but I'm here right now.
Yes, sir. All I'm trying to do is take down your name and where you live.
Yeah, I live in the city. And as outreach coordinator for the Key 28 campaign, I live in the Northern Corridor, live in the 28th Ward. And as outreach coordinator, the most common pressing concern among the black working class is being sick and tired of white elected officials and some petty bourgeoisies trying to decide what's best for them. And the most pressing concern, as Alderman Collins brought up early, is economic control of the economics in their community, and also political control. And Alderwoman who brought up this BS doctrine of the ward reduction, you know, if it is passed, that the black working class will not have no economic control of where they live. That means more white folks will come in, take their money, and go on the other side of town when the sun go down. We say the hell with that. We say the hell with that. And so, I just want y'all to know, the Key 28 campaign is up for a fight against this reduction. We will fight, we will mobilize, and we will bust out to make sure that this is not a reality for our babies. Because our babies do not deserve to continue to live in the same oppression that's brought by the capitalists and the imperialists. We tired of it. And we ain't taking it no more. Excuse my French, but there's some grown people in this state, and I'm gonna be me. Peace. Oh,
Mr. Chairman, can we ask Mr. Brown? Would you come back to the mic? Clerk, would you please pass Mr. Brown the sign-up sheet, please? 'Cause I want the record to reflect. Mr. Brown, would you please point out your names on the sign-up sheet?
Like I said, Alderman Boyd, I was intentionally passed up. So, hey, I said my piece, Alderman Boyd.
Yeah.
Like I say, as outreach coordinator this Key 28 campaign, it is my job to mobilize and to get ready for a fight in the war. That's what I plan on doing for the sake of my babies and for the sake of the future of the city of St. Louis.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. I just want to make sure that the record is true. Mr. Brown had a chance to speak, which most people have a chance to speak.
Kathy Gamache. Ma'am, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Vice Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Kathy Gamache, and these are some of my fellow committee members.
My name is Dwayne Evans, and I'm the committee woman of the 4th Ward.
Patty Ellis, Brown, committee woman of the 23rd.
Lucinda Frazier, committee woman of the 3rd Ward and vice chair of the Democratic City Central Committee.
5th Ward, Committeeman Rasheen Aldridge, Treasurer for the City of St. Louis Democratic Central Committee.
My name is Kathy Gamache, and I'm proud to say that I have been the elected committee woman of the 11th Ward since 1985. That makes me the senior committee member. I have also been a member of the Executive Board of the Central Committee since 1992, and I hold the post of Recording Secretary. I would like to share with you some of the concerns that the members of the Central Committee have. Committee people represent each of the 28 wards, and we run for office every 4 years. We're scheduled to run again in August of 2020 for an anticipated 4-year term. While it seems that tentative plans have been formulated for the election of aldermen, with odd ward aldermen running for a 2-year term in the spring of 2020, followed by a full 4-year term election 2 years later in 2023. How does this impact the committee people in our 4-year term? While committee posts are party positions, we are also elected by our constituents who are also your constituents. We are elected to lead the Democratic ward organizations and to serve our constituents' needs for elections. Our concerns are not solely selfish or self-serving interests, but our concerns are for our constituents. Committee people are involved in not only our own elections, but also every election that's held in the city of St. Louis. We are concerned that not being included in the planning process will cause confusion and impede our ability to help get out the vote and help our constituents exercise their right to vote. I have personally not missed working an election in 34 years. The Central Committee respectfully asks to be included in the planning process and not be shut out. Lastly, for the record, I'd like it to be known that on numerous occasions, the Central Committee of the City of St. Louis, by an overwhelming majority, has voted to work to place this issue back on the ballot and re-educate our voters so that they understand the ramifications of what this bill will do to the City of St. Louis. Our constituents are used to our aldermen being a conduit to city services. They're used to the committee being a conduit to the aldermen and to city services. And when you reduce the Board of Aldermen, it reduces your ability as aldermen to serve the constituents' needs. It reduces our ability to be party leaders and to help get out the vote. And I think that's all I'd like to say.
Thank you. And,
I'm sorry.
ma'am, what ward did you say you were from again?
I'm sorry.
What ward were you from?
I'm from the 11th Ward.
11th Ward. Thank you.
And once again, I am Lucinda Frazier, committee woman of the 3rd Ward and vice chair of the Democratic City Central Committee. It behooves me how sneaky they put it on the ballot in the first place. 99% of the people that have no idea, and we as committee people, we learned about it a couple of weeks in advance when we didn't have enough time to get out and knock on doors to our constituents in each one of our wards to let them know what was on the ballot and how it was going to impact us. We voted A, B, C, and D back, if I'm not mistaken, in 2012 or 2004, that we did not want to be reduced. Then they turned around and snuck it and put it back in there. It not only affects the African American community, but it affects the whole city of St. Louis. We're affected every day in North St. Louis of what we have to deal with, such as trash pickup. I'm 6 feet tall and I have grass now standing in my ward that is taller than I am. That's a problem. We have services that we have to constantly call in the alderman of the 3rd Ward and myself working hard for our constituents that we have to constantly call to come out and do this and do that. So imagine if they reduced it to 14. Imagine how hard it's going to be for us to get any services, not just only in North St. Louis, but South St. Louis too. So as a whole, we asking you all, as all the people, that the people of the city of St. Louis voted you all into office to serve us, to look at this bill and know it needs to go back on the ballot and give every one of us a chance to go out there and explain to our constituents what they will give up, and I guarantee you they will vote it down. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
My name is Dwayne Evans, and I'm the committee woman of the 4th Ward. I'm here representing Alderman Sam Moore. I have worked alongside with Sam Moore, trying to get services and resources done for our constituents. And it's been an uphill battle trying to get yards cut, just like Committee Woman Lucinda said. I was told that we have our own cutting services in the 4th Ward. Now, who would put that out? We walked with the Forestry Commissioner, Alan Jankowski, and showed him the vacant lots and buildings that needed to be cut. Now, I will say, this year, they've started a different strategy. Instead of sending 8 or 9 people to attack a whole ward, now they say they have 150 people. So, well, I have seen some improvement, and I commend you for that. But we only get cuttings twice a year. My grass don't grow twice a year. My grass grows every day. So what do we do when the grass starts growing again? Can you come back and get it? Nope. We only cut it twice a year. So, told my constituents, we need to take matters in our own hands. Quit sitting back and letting the city give us what they want to give us. We have to change our mindset and start doing it ourselves. We like living in a nice, beautiful, safe area. But we're not asking you for a handout. We're asking you for a hand up. If you won't cut it, we will cut it. And we're going to take before and after pictures and send you the bill. Because it doesn't make sense. No longer are we going to sit back and just accept what you want to give us.
Thank you. Mr. Aldridge?
I'll keep it brief. Thank you to the committee chairman for hearing us out. My name is Rasheen Aldridge. I'm the committee man of the mighty 5th Ward. Today I stand in solidarity with my fellow committee members who are standing here, as well as the other 23 about 30 so that also agreed to make sure we keep 28 wards, as well as standing in solidarity with Huru, making sure that we fight to keep 28 wards if it's done through the ballot box or if it's a signature gathering by the people. I think I'm not going. A lot of things have already been said of why people want to keep 28. I think the issue is when you look at this process, people want to be included and they're asking for fairness. We're saying a lot about shutting 28 down and going to 14 makes it more efficient. We want to move our city forward. Efficiency doesn't mean equitable. Efficiency doesn't mean equality either. And what people are currently saying is they feel like their voice was left out of the process. This vote has happened multiple times. In 2012, it was really slammed down people's throats. A long ballot, like we just recently seen in the previous election where you have president, senator, state reps, and other issues that people wasn't fully able to focus on this and digest it. We are currently asking from the Democratic Central Committee to be part of this process. Whatever the process is, if it's going to be 28, which we strongly are fighting for to make sure it stays that way, or if it happens to be 14, which we strongly urge it to be against, we want to be part of that process. We want to be part of it. We want fairness, and we want our voices to be heard, and we're asking that this go back to the ballot box. If my fellow alder people could support Alderman John Muhammad bill, at least putting it on the ballot so people can make a decision on it, or we'll be having to do it through petition gathering, but regardless of what it is, we do want to be part of the process and make sure whatever happens that our voice is also part of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm John Watson, 18th Ward Committee man. Just want to go on record that they support the views of the Central Committee. And also my constituents that are concerned about reduction of the ward would certainly have problems with representation and services and being able to contact the aldermen. And so they're very concerned about that going to 14 wards would we would not have representation in the 18 wards as we should. So I want to go on record in supporting the 28 wards and also being part of the process of ward reduction.
Thank you.
Can I comment, or are we doing comments?
Nathan Plum.
Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity to address this committee. My name is Nathan Plum. I'm an 18-year resident of the 26th Ward, living near intersection of Goodfellow and Cabanee. And I'm not sure that my points that I wanted to make are all that relevant anymore. I was hoping to speak to the advisory committee and the importance of that, and I wanted to make 2 points with regard to that committee. First of all, I think it's important to hear from the citizens with respect to the ward reduction issue, and I think that's the value of a citizens advisory committee. So I would encourage that process to continue. I understand there's some procedural issues perhaps, but I think the importance of hearing from the citizens in that type of committee advisory process is important. Second, I want to speak to the process of getting on that committee. I have applied to be on that committee. I regularly attend neighborhood meetings at the Monsanto YMCA on Page Avenue. This committee was brought up numerous times, or the opportunity to be on the committee was identified numerous times at these neighborhood committees. I was encouraged through the leadership of that neighborhood group to apply for the committee. I did apply. I got the support of my neighbors to attempt to participate on that committee. So for whatever it's worth, I think it's important to hear from the citizens through that advisory committee process, and I think the process of getting citizens onto that committee has worked well, at least there in the northern part of the 26th Ward. Thank you.
Thank you. Clara Simrel?
She's no longer here.
And then there was a woman who wished to speak who did not get the sign-up sheet, I believe. She spoke. Does anyone have anything further?
Again, my name is Columbaye.
Yes, ma'am.
And I just want to plead with all the people. I want to appreciate all you, but I really plead with you to understand that we could do it easy or we could make it hard. But whatever way, the black community is gonna fight for this. Ferguson happened and the world watched. We have an opportunity to say, St. Louis have an opportunity, we have an opportunity to say that this will be the blueprint of St. Louis coming together and stopping gentrification. You could be a part of the history on the right side of the question, or you could be part of the history on the wrong side of the question. But this means death. And I know that the north side looked like that, but it's designed, this social system is designed for the north side to look like that. The north side looked like that. You was talking to somebody that brother dead 27 years. You know, I understand horizontal violence. I lost 2 brothers to horizontal violence, cousins. Just last week, four cousins, 2 brothers, and all of them were first cousins, killed at the same time. So I think that I am qualified to say that the only way that we can change horizontal violence is to keep these 28 wards and have all the people that represent their community and work with the people and work with grassroots organizations such as the Black Power Blueprint. If you don't know what it is, get involved. Come and see what we're doing. Come and see what we're doing. But it's no way that 14 wards is going to solve this. It's not. And what I have seen done in 1 year with the Black Power Blueprint, I think that St. Louis can do it in 2 years with the right plan, with the right people. But 14 wards ain't gonna do it. And I say that black people united will never be defeated. Will never be defeated. And I don't see the people. I have full confidence in people that you've never seen registered to vote have found a reason to vote. Once that we went out and educated them and helped them understand about the 28 wards. People that you've never seen go to the ballot before, not because black people lazy, but we didn't even see a reason to go to the ballot. I never cared about this chamber before Mike Brown died. But I understand that I could not continue to allow y'all to have these meetings and I'm not in the room. So I'm speaking for my people that come to those Sunday rallies. I'm speaking for Pookie and Ray Ray, little stomach ache and little pistol starter. And say we got to save them. So get on the right side of the question. Unite with John and make it easy, or we coming for you.
Thank you. Ms. Navarro, you wanted a point of clarification, I believe?
Thank you. And I just also wanted to thank everyone who testified today. I think it's very important to hear from as many people as we can. So I'm just grateful for everyone who showed up today. And I just wanted to clarify earlier when the question was asked about if I had talked to any of the committee people about this advisory committee. I have spoken to committee people about ward reduction, about the advisory committee. Alderwoman Boyd and I, in our capacity of having meetings as co-chairs for this committee, in those meetings, I don't believe there were any committee people in those meetings because of what we were seeking to do at that time. But I have spoken to committee persons about ward reduction. So I just wanted to be clear on that I have, including the 28th Ward, 5th Ward, other members of the Central Committee. That's all. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Alderman, let me ask you, because it seemed like the committee people were extremely concerned. Do you see a role for the committee people in this process? Because, of course, process is everything. And if you see a role of the committee people, what role do you see them potentially playing?
Yeah, definitely I see a role for them. So one is we have not firmed up the members of this advisory committee yet, and it was left somewhat open in the enabling resolution. It did not specify a particular number. So I think that's definitely something that we could consider, is that there would be a member of the Central Committee on the advisory committee. We definitely could set up a specific meeting for the advisory committee to meet with all of the members of the Central Committee. I think, the resolution left a lot of this open specifically so that we could hear input and we could be flexible. So I definitely would support including them in some way.
And just for clarity also, it's basically your recommendation that it's 11 people on the advisory committee, is that correct?
That was our recommendation, yes.
Okay, and do you see that might be expanding, or is 11 the magic number? or?
So we were considering the fact that there are no resources or staff assigned to this effort, so it was partially looking at how do we come up with a manageable number that we can communicate with and that we can manage. We also thought it was important to have an odd number so that depending on how the committee makes any decisions about the recommendations that they make, that we don't have a split. But there's nothing magical about that number.
Okay. It's unfortunate today. It seemed like we had two different conversations, which made the meeting kind of confusing, even for me, because the meeting was supposed to have conversation about if we were to reduce to 14, there's this advisory committee, and what would that look like? And we didn't seem to really get there today. And my question is it your intentions to do another resolution to resurrect what was, initial, was it 12, resolution 12? Is that your intention to do another resolution?
Well, what I would like to do, and I don't know if, and this is, I guess, a conversation we need to have probably with legal counsel. I don't know if we need to do another resolution or if this committee could potentially extend the deadline that was in there. I know there are other advisory committees that kind of are meeting, have been meeting for years, and so I don't know how that has happened in the past. If it requires another resolution, we can do that. I feel like as much work as it took us just to get us to this point, I would like to find a way for us to move forward, expeditiously.
Right. So when we brought this up last year, it was kind of clear that the committee didn't really want to have a subcommittee. So it made sense and it's very practical to do what you're doing. And we're part of the legislative body. And I guess I want to make sure the committee people feel that their voices are being heard. And they're not a legislative body, and they're, citizens, but they're a little more than citizens because they're official public servants. And so as I look at your 11, I'm just wondering if you might want to consider adding a certain number of committee people to this process so that we can make sure that their voice is heard. And also, just for the record, I want to make it clear that there's two different conversations. So there's the conversation about putting it back on the ballot, which certainly John Collins Muhammad is interested in doing that. And I think there's a place and there's a time to have that discussion. And then there's the discussion about what do we do moving forward, because if it doesn't get overturned by being on the ballot, it is what it is, and we need to be prepared for that. I think that's the only response. That is very responsible, and it's very critical that we do that. But I would hope that in the future that we have meetings where we stay in those particular lanes and not make it confusing to the public. Because I am very process-oriented. I like to have a backup plan. I will publicly support putting it back on the ballot, but I also support having this process, because as far as I'm concerned, this process is potentially a backup plan or it's absolute. So I just want to, say that for the record, because I'm very frustrated doing this meeting today. I thought it kind of went totally out in left field, and I wasn't expecting that. So if we have these further conversations, I would hope that it's very clear to the public that, why we are here, and that one has nothing to do with the other. So.
Yep.
Thank
you.
Say that.
And I agree, and I think it's important that we have facilitated meetings moving forward. That is what I've hoped, not these meetings, not the legislation committee meetings, but for the Ward Reduction Advisory Committee, it has always been my hope that we could either find pro bono services to help facilitate and coordinate that group, or we could put together a proposal to get some funding to have somebody come in and help facilitate, because I think these are important conversations, and there is a lot to talk about, obviously, but we need to keep them focused so that we can do this work in front of us.
It seemed like you have some great minds on this selection committee, like Nicole, for example. Nicole is skilled in facilitating, being at a university, lends credibility. Maybe there's staff at a university, or maybe some interns somewhere that can help facilitate those discussions. Because I do think it's very important that the committee hears both pros and cons, and at the end of the day come up with some some decent recommendations. And again, the recommendations will only be recommendations.
Right.
Because it's the legislative body that's going to actually create the ordinance to move forward.
We will explore all of those options, working with academic institutional partners, interns, all of that. Thank you.
Anything further? Anything further? Are there any announcements from the legislative committee? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Thank you.
Second.